watch Fox News instead. Yet if you watch David Pakman, they recommend more Pakman to you. They recommend more Young Turks to you. They allow...
Did you have any data to back this up? It all feels like the feels, you know? Like I can distinguish between here's two different studies that have both kind of come to the same conclusion. At this point, I think there'll probably in the future be more, but this seems to be a demonstrable pattern. Neat. Here's my own personal anecdotes, completely separate. The feelies, they don't prove anything. They're just what I, from my own POV, have kind of experienced.
Game played by the corporate press. A story that claims YouTube algorithm more likely to recommend users right-wing and religious content, research finds. What they do is they set up a game to destroy you.
Wow. He's going hard right out of the gates here, because I was like, this is interesting. I thought when this story came out that yes, analysis shows that the YouTube algorithm is more likely to recommend right-wing content, religious content. It's not specifically, by the way, based on the research, because that content is being selected firsthand by YouTube staff, and they're intentionally designing an algorithm that's going to be promoting content. Their algorithms, as far as we know, because they're not transparent about how they work, are industry secrets after all, typically fall along the lines of them wanting to promote content that keeps you engaged and watching their platforms for as long as possible. And if they find out that you are going to be more prone to watch longer form content, if they happen to go down certain pathways, then they're probably most likely going to recommend that. That's why the two things that are important to people who are YouTubers is both the click-through rate, as in how many times someone looks at your thumbnail and title and clicks on it, and then the watch length, how long someone will stay on your channel, which is why a lot of YouTube videos you might notice for the first couple minutes are kind of really ADHD, hyper engineered to kind of really engage you, right? It's like, oh, coming up next, sounds, cool clips, excitement, and you're like, whoa, what's this gonna, I'm gonna keep watching. And maybe not the very thing that you came to go see is at the very start of the video. You gotta wait for some time to get there. Again, all of it to push you into the algorithm more so people watch your content. But also, according to Tim Pool, it's part of a war to destroy you.
Lie about it to the public to make it seem like you're the beneficiary of their scheme. The reality is this: right-wing content is being shuffled, funneled, tiny-roomed, shadow banned, etc. They then claim because YouTube is trying to silence people on the right, actually they're helping the right. Why? Because they're funneling everyone to Fox.
Well, I don't know if he's going to read it, but we could. YouTube has a pattern of recommending right-leaning and Christian videos even to users who haven't previously interacted with that kind of content, according to a recent study of the platform suggested to users. The four-part research project, conducted by London-based nonprofit organization that researches extremism called the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, explored video recommendations served to accounts designed to mimic users interested in four topic areas: gaming, male lifestyle gurus, mummy vloggers, and Spanish-language news. We wanted to, for the most part, look at topics that don't generally direct people into extremist worlds or anything like those lines. Researchers created accounts and built mock user personas by searching for content, subscribing to channels, and watching videos using those accounts. And after having built up the persona for 5 days, researchers recorded the video recommendations displayed on each account's homepage for a month. The study noted that YouTube's recommendation algorithm drives 70% of all video views. In one investigation, the most frequently recommended news channel for both child and adult accounts interested in male lifestyle guru content was Fox News, even though neither account had watched Fox News during the persona building stage. Instead, the account watched Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and searched for the term alpha male. Hell yeah. This suggests that YouTube associated male lifestyle videos and creators with conservative topics. In another experiment, researchers created two accounts interested in mummy vloggers, mothers who make video diaries about parenting, that they trained to have different political biases. One of the accounts watched Fox News and the other watched MSNBC. Despite having watched their respective channels for equal amounts of time, the right-leaning account was later more frequently recommended Fox News than the left-leaning account was recommended MSNBC. A mummy vlogger account with the left-leaning user had already subscribed to was the most recommended channel. The results suggest that right-leaning news content is more frequently recommended than left-leaning. Both accounts were recommended videos by an anti-vaccine influencer. Jesse Daniels, a professor of sociology at Hunter College, part of the City University of New York, the author of the 2018 article titled "The Algorithmic Rise of the Alt-Right," said the project's main findings were in line with her previous research. She has examined the rise of the internet in the 1990s and how the far right saw an opening to share their beliefs with larger audiences by bypassing the traditional media gatekeepers. Daniels said she believes the findings suggest that YouTube has made continued engagement and profits in its priorities rather than concerns about reinforcing reinforcing existing political biases or echo chambers. Videos with religious themes, primarily Christianity, were also recommended to all accounts, even though none of them had watched religious content during their personal building stage. The accounts interested in mummy vloggers, for example, were shown videos with Bible verses. The researchers also found that YouTube recommended videos including sexually explicit content to the child accounts and videos featuring influencer Andrew Tate, who had been charged with human trafficking and rape, allegations that he has denied in Romania, even though he is banned from the platform. Heading into this year's presidential race, concerns about the spread of election misinformation on social media are only growing. In 2022, a study by the researchers at New York University found that after the last presidential election, YouTube recommended videos that pushed voter fraud claims to Donald Trump supporters. One of the main issues as we're seeing is polarization across society, and I think that social media is contributing an awful lot to that kind of polarization. This isn't the first time YouTube has faced scrutiny for its algorithm. Researchers have repeatedly found that YouTube has recommended extremism and conspiracy videos to users. We welcome research of our recommendation system, but it's difficult to draw conclusions based on the test accounts created by the researchers, which may not be consistent with behavior of real people. YouTube's recommendation system is trained to raise high-quality content on the homepage, in search results, and the Watch Next panel for viewers of all ages. And I'm not here to defend YouTube and what they push. I think they've done a lot of really fucked up shit, especially the incentivization that these algorithms have to keep people on YouTube as long as possible, combining that with the fact that there seems to be a very large market for incendiary content or far-right content, and allowing so much of that to foster and bloom on their networks for such a long time before they actually decided to do anything about it or actually try and close down a lot of the extremist channels, ones that do Holocaust denial, ones that engage directly in, a dehumanization of indigenous people or black people or stuff like that. Their attack on the actual Nazi accounts was way too slow in relation to how much damage they'd been doing on their networks. I think front-facing, though, obviously, YouTube wants to be as brand safe as possible. So on their homepage, you're probably going to see a lot of videos by other people who they frequently, will think that are going to be the top 10 or top 50, most trending videos. You're going to see stuff on there. The problem being is that if you see a video by a top trending YouTuber, such as a PewDiePie, for example, or even a Mr. Beast, who's now the biggest user on the platform, they could also have at some point or another collaborated with someone else who at some point or another had collaborated with someone else who also pushes stuff in the manosphere, stuff in the red pill zone, stuff in that, or they may frequently watch both kinds of content because super popular content sometimes will also overlap with other content that other people may not originally think that they wanted to see, but all of a sudden the algorithm's recommending it to them. But the bigger point in all this, and maybe the reason why Tim doesn't want to, but to be fair, we've only started this video, want to go deep into the actual research that's being done here, is because you always hear this lie. You always hear people on the right telling you that all of social media has a left-wing bias. And they usually mean, I'm assuming, a liberal bias, because it certainly does not have a left-wing bias. I am not recommended on I've done this test before with multiple different accounts. Just you start a brand new burner account from scratch, and then you don't look for anything political. I've done one where all I wanted to do was look up Castlevania 2 music, because I was just I wanted to look up the OST, blah, 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 and then see how YouTube treats me. And after looking up that and getting a bunch of recommendations for gaming channels and tons of stuff that you would expect to see, all of a sudden Jordan Peterson video pops up in your recommended next that has nothing to do with Castlevania. Maybe he's talking about, the neo-Marxist vampires or something like that in there. But at that point, I'm like, that's wild, because I never see, hey, have you heard about capitalist labor exploitation? Click on, the Marx 101 channel. No, I never see that shit. And this is, again, completely subjective. This is just me starting a new account, seeing, oh yeah, if I look up Castlevania music, how long does it take before, boom, there it is, Jordan Peterson, up in the recommended for you channel. That sucks. That's too bad. But if you look at the studies now, and this is the second study conducted looking into this kind of stuff, it does seem to be a pattern that eventually right-wing, which could be more incendiary content, starts to get recommended to people. Whether or not, that happens to be something that they've tweaked or it's built into it, or the algorithm's just doing what the algorithm was designed to do, which again, it does not have feelings or thoughts. It's not conscience. It's just a series of ones and zeros. This is the best way to keep people using YouTube for as long as possible, is potentially to go and send them down potentially right-wing rabbit holes, so they keep on, views, likes, clicks, all that kind of stuff.
Called the Alternative Influencer Network. It was a fabrication. A woman had grossly misinterpreted data to smear people, falsely accusing people like Chris Ray Gun, who was a video game vlogger, and like comedy content, of having collaborated directly with Richard Spencer, the most prominent white nationalist at the time.
This isn't true. If we're talking about the same report, I mean, I'll look it up, but I actually did a lot of research into that because I was using it at the time in a documentary we were working on for Steven Crowder. And again, the insidiousness of, social media algorithms and how they can push in a lot of right-wing content. The concept behind that was, or the alt-right pipeline report that came out was not specifically that someone like Chris Reagan was collaborating directly with a neo-Nazi like Richard Spencer. It was that Chris Reagan, who was producing at the time a lot of Gamergate content, as were a lot of people, especially a lot of young men, were producing a lot of Gamergate centered topics, of which they were obviously expressing a lot of anger and rage towards the women who were trying at the time to explain how there was a series of things, tropes within video games that aren't often explored. They weren't trying to take video games away from dudes. They were simply trying to be like, hey, if we analyze media in the same way that we analyze anything else, movies, TV shows, music, why can't we do that from an academic perspective? Look at some of the tropes in video games. And then when you start to actually, like, if you watch Feminist Frequency and you watch some of the videos and you go through them, I get why for like a teenage boy at the time, and myself when I was a young teenage boy, times in your life that are really, really tough, and you might not be popular in school, you might not have a lot of friends, you might not be one of the people who goes and parties on Fridays. That was me for a large part of my high school. And for me, being able to play video games, being able to have Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy 3, aka Final Fantasy 6 or Silent Hill 2, and be able to play that for hours on a weekend, that not only was unbelievably entertaining to me, but it also was a form of escapism too, where you could just transport yourself into these stories and other worlds and all that kind of stuff. So I cherished, that aspect of life. And if there had been this movement that was trying to tell me, hey, by the way, there's elements of these games that you're playing that are sexist. There's elements of these games that you're playing that are racist. You might not be aware of them, because again, it's so deeply embedded in society and so hard-coded in all aspects of society. But you might not know this. When you play these video games, there are elements here that are basically propagating sexist tropes, which again, hypersexualize women, can dehumanize minorities, stuff like that. I can understand why, especially if you don't have a really good understanding of the world and these are important to you and you cherish these video games, why there would have been a backlash. So for some of that, I understand, the online young teenagers of that generation who during Gamergate were all of a sudden, they're trying to tell me I'm a bad person for liking video games. That was combined, though, with so much lies that a lot of opportunists, by the way, Milo Yiannopoulos was a massive opportunist, someone who talked about how video games are bad for you for a very long time for Breitbart. He was one of the tech commentators for Breitbart who was constantly pushing shit out there. Like, oh, video games can increase violence. Video games can actually, cause people to become goon cave masters and shit like that. That was before gooning even existed, but the very concept was there. Video games are bad for you. That used to be a very big conservative talking point. It was Steve Bannon and some other figures on the right who recognized that there was a lot of rage within that community when he was running these basically farming, they were gold farms for World of Warcraft. He was hiring gamers in basically other parts of the world to mine gold in World of Warcraft, and he would then sell that for real money as part of his company. He eventually got that entire operation shut down because the World of Warcraft gamers were very, very upset at the idea of bot farms or just farming communities and people who were doing pay to play in their own game. So they en masse started protesting digitally. They were, writing in forums. They were doing all kinds of stuff. And the company ended up saying, yes, we will crack down on this. We will prevent people from doing gold farming. And Steve Bannon was kind of taken aback by that and was like, holy shit, he said, quote, I've realized the power of white male rage in these gamers and how to utilize that and start to turn that into a culture war battle that could eventually benefit someone like Donald Trump. And there is an entire storyline to be seen there. It's absolutely fascinating. Going back, to this though, and all the political opportunists who would talk about that kind of stuff or talk about video games or try to push any of those kind of topics. Chris Reagan, if he's there and he's talking to you about, hey, by the way, all of these, third wave feminists are telling us that we're all like, you know, sexists and racists just because we like video games. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're not even real gamers. Look, it's been exposed right here. Anita Sarkeesian never played video games before. She says it in this interview. She has no idea what the fuck she's talking about. She only started doing this because she wanted to be able to shit all over something that we all love. They're trying to destroy it. They're trying to, like, you know, allow women into the space and call us all these bad names, blah, blah, blah. Fuck them. Fuck them. So yeah, someone who's watching that loves Chris Ray Gun, loves all his like comedy videos or other like edgy humor style shit, may see that and suddenly get recommended to them other stuff that goes along that line of criticizing feminism. Third wave feminism's bad. Sargon of Akkad. Oh, okay. Up next. All right, sure, I'll click on that. 2-hour fucking lecture of Sargon of Akkad suddenly saying things about how all the third wave feminists are actually deeply misogynistic and racist themselves, and that's the, you know, they're actually the ones who are bigots of the highest order, and you know, stuff like that. And you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, but I'm interested now. And hey, look at that. Sargon of Akkad has this new video coming up with a whole bunch of weird people I've never heard of. One of them happens to be friends with this other person I haven't heard of, Richard Spencer. That's how there could be a pipeline algorithmically made for someone who is for the first time watching, you know, video game videos, then watching Chris Ray Gun, then becoming a fan of Chris Ray Gun, then all of a sudden being recommended videos by the Jordan Petersons, by the Sargon of Akkads, by the Quarterines and all that kind of stuff. That's how that stuff worked. And yeah, it was really good for someone to finally try and connect that and point that out as to, yes, this is a phenomenon that can exist because of the cross-pollination that all these people do. That's when you have you know, you might just be a Joe Rogan fan, but if Joe Rogan has on Dave Rubin, you have opened the door to all of the weird ass racist guests that Dave Rubin has on his show on a regular basis. And so yeah, you may not have in the first place looked for you know, someone like I forget the name of that Taylor guy, that white supremacist piece of shit, but like to get all the way to the white supremacist corner of the internet, it's not impossible through this entire process kind of thing.
Time. These
Thunderfoot as well.
And we're so far apart, it made literally no sense. Following this, the YouTube app.
Tim's debunking of that. They never met. They're literally so far apart. It doesn't make any sense. I guess if you didn't read it, if you read the report, it explains that entire process. I kind of gave you the TLDR there, so I'm not going to say it twice. But yeah, no, it's not just that, like, Chris Ray Gun has never in his life met Richard Spencer or even mentioned Richard Spencer. How in the world are these two people connected? It doesn't make any sense. I discount it. It was a lie.
Algorithm changed. All of a sudden, anybody listed on this report saw their recommendations drop massively. These videos were doing really well. People were making content that wasn't white nationalist or anything. I mean, my content, for instance, was just general news. My recommendations dropped as well.
I happen to be interviewing a lot of people who others have accused of being white supremacists, white nationalists, neo-Nazis. You know, I don't call them that, though. That's their words. I prefer identitarian. Okay, these are just members of identity groups, and that's what they are. So I think it's also weird that they would accuse me of that.
What people saw instead, they stopped recommending my videos and started recommending Fox News. They stopped recommending Joe Rogan. They started recommending Fox News. They stopped recommending Chris Ray Gun. They started recommending Fox News. What was actually happening was the shuffling of people away from one group, one network, into a controlled corporate press narrative. Fox News. We call this the pressure release valve. Now they go.
And pray tell, did you coin that term, or is that done within your circles? Yes. The scientific way of describing this, I believe, yes, the official term is the pressure release valve, if you haven't heard of it. Yes, quite interesting.
I want to say, but when the mommy vlogger, two of them, watched Fox News or MSNBC, the one that watched MSNBC did not get recommended MSNBC all that often. Why? This is exactly what's happening.
Okay.
If you are, when we saw this shift, what did we see? If you're the Young Turks, if you were David Pakman or Kyle Kalinske, they were not affected at all. Their approach to the news was mainstream media acceptable and did not defy the narratives from MSNBC.
This is just based on vibes and feelings. I mean, everyone could be lying, but I've seen, again, from those same people that he's mentioning, David Pakman, Kyle Kalinske, or even TYT, frequently talk about how a lot of their videos and content have been either demonetized, or they feel like they've been shadow banned or saw censored. Again, this is all conjecture. None of us have a really good way of proving that, right? Like, I can definitely tell you twice, 2 separate times, 2 channels of mine have been completely removed off YouTube. I got no recourse, no strikes, no nothing, just deleted. That did happen. I can't prove that it was because it was being mass flagged by, insidious actors, but it certainly seems that way, considering I was being mass flagged for things that we weren't doing, like scams, malpractice, and stuff like that. We were not in any. It was just a video on Joe Rogan. It was just a video on PewDiePie. That those were the 2 only real close to viral videos I had. One of them had like over 10,000 views, which was nuts at the time. Back then, it was like, oh my god, 10,000 views. This is wild. But like, yeah, that is just my own personal account. In terms of this, it's better to look at the data. What Tim's saying is completely, like, I guess he just didn't want to read past this paragraph, because it wasn't that everyone's being recommended Fox News because it's corporately controlled, and Fox News, again, is just going to be something in which people can directly say is advertiser friendly. That's it. It's no, they were running specific experiments, and they wanted to control those experiments by allowing people in these 2 categories, both of them being mummy vloggers. So essentially they tried to pretend to be mothers and the kind of content they would have been looking up on a regular basis, and they wanted to see what happens if someone is a conservative mother and what happens if someone is a liberal mom. So the liberal mom is watching mostly MSNBC style content all the time, and that's what they're looking up. They're searching for it, they're subscribing to it, they're liking it. That's what they're doing. On the other end, the conservative mom is doing that same thing for Fox News and some other conservative outlets, and then seeing what they were both recommended. It turned out, even in the case of the liberal mom who was looking up MSNBC content, she was still starting to get recommended Fox News content in addition to that, which would be more conservative or right-wing than anything she demonstrated that she wants to see, that she wants to consume. Like, if you're trying to be like, yeah, I know what you like, I'm a hyper-intelligent AI, protocol, here we are, this is what you want, right? Well, then it's unusual that I would recommend Fox News in that case. That's what's interesting about this.
So it doesn't matter if it's MSNBC or any other channel that shares that political worldview. They weren't being censored. The censorship was only on the right, which meant...
No, it wasn't at all.
If you watch Timcast IRL, fact, they were telling you to watch Fox News instead. Why? Well, Fox News follows a conservative but still corporate line. Many people on the right are not fans of Fox News and haven't watched.
So Fox News just isn't extreme enough for you? I understand that. One of your most frequent guests is Jack Posobiec. He's a white supremacist. The guy obviously is going to sit there and be like, yeah, Fox, ever since Tucker left, doesn't go hard enough, you know? I mean, Tucker, when he was on there, he at least was parodying a lot of those white supremacist talking points that we all know and love. He was able to pick it up. He knew, oh man, that guy know how to dog whistle. Oh, just beautifully on a regular basis. Holy shit. He get every single, Ku Klux Klan member, white supremacist, neo-Nazi, all of them to sit there and nod in unison and be like, yes, keep saying it, daddy. Western civilization is superior. Western civilization is superior. Oh, I want to hear more of it. That was perfect. So yeah, maybe that crowd, that right-wing group doesn't like Fox News. Fair enough. Again, that's not what this study is showing. This study was not demonstrating that in one way or another, Fox News happens to be, again, the most corporately safe and corporately branded product. That's the reason why. And this shows, again, a bias of right-wing individuals in media. It's like, no, people who were even not looking up things, well, not people, because they're, again, tests, but tests of fake user accounts that were intentionally not looking up right-wing, information to consume were being recommended right-wing information to consume. And Fox News, sure, we could say Fox News, Sky News, they are certainly, yes, corporate institutions, without question. That doesn't mean that they're not still empires of bigotry, right? Like, Fox News is pushing anti-LGBTQ plus content all the time. They're one of the biggest propagators of that kind of stuff on, national television. Same thing with Sky News, pushing out shit that, like, in hindsight is similar to if you had a national network every single day that was trying to tell you, like, hey, by the way, don't leave the house because gays are out there and they could give you the AIDS. So make sure you avoid the gays. Gays have AIDS and they will give it to you. They actually band together in groups. They try to intentionally, spread the disease, things like that. Like that's the tier of Fox News today towards trans people. Like, yes, it would be very socially unacceptable and certainly well beyond the Overton window of acceptability to go directly against gay people in the way that would have been socially acceptable to do in the 80s. But this is simply the new, what they find acceptable entry point for bigotry to, again, go after all of the LGBTQ+.
Tucker Carlson left the network, and many even before that. You'd go onto YouTube, you'd watch Timcast IRL, real long conversations with news articles, NewsGuard certified New York Times, and we'd criticize them, we'd fact check them. And they started recommending anyone who watched our videos to go watch Fox News instead. Yet if you watch David Pakman, they recommend more Pakman to you. They recommend more Young Turks to you. They allow...
Did you have any data to back this up? It all feels like the feels, you know? Like, I can distinguish between, here's two different studies that have both kind of come to the same conclusion. At this point, I think there'll probably in the future be more, but this seems to be a demonstrable pattern. Neat. Here's my own personal anecdotes, completely separate. The feelies, they don't prove anything. They're just what I, from my own POV, have kind of experienced. But yeah, apparently, if you watch David Pakman, Kyle Kalinske, TYT, they will only recommend you more David Pakman, Kyle Kalinske, TYT specifically forever, and that's just how that works because they favor the left. Again, the proof for that is vibes.
The independent left voices to maintain their presence and grow. Now they lie, twisting what is actually happening to make it seem like, but Fox News is getting recommended. Oh, how dare they? What YouTube is actually doing is making sure they silo all of us. It's called the tiny room shadow ban technique.
I was like, so we've learned about a couple of technical terms, by the way. I don't want anyone here who doesn't have a background in science to get confused. So one of the first ones, of course, we have the pressure valve release, okay? And then now we have the tiny room silencing technique. Was that it? Oh, sorry, I may have forgotten the technical term. We got to learn. This is science.
It's called the tiny room shadow ban technique.
The tiny room shadow ban technique. Yes, sorry. So just remember that, okay? So while they will deny it, it's one thing that is completely factually accurate, is that any single right-winger who wants to bring on neo-Nazis apparently will be silenced by having Fox News recommended afterwards. That's the degree of censorship we're dealing with here. Yes, they seem to silence the Tim Pools of the world and all the, far-right extremists that he brings on his show, and then, they'll go the extra mile by recommending Fox News instead of another Tim Pool video.
You make sure that these people can only stay in this one place. And if you're in this one place, you might get recommended this content. But what do? They recommend Fox News. That's the only exit. The more of these videos you watch, the more you'll be recommended Fox News and be pulled away from that room. Tiny room basically means if you watch my videos, you might see them recommended, but any new user who comes to YouTube will not see my videos recommended. They'll see Fox News. This is the corporate press trying to control the narratives that exist in the mainstream. They don't want to ban channels like mine outright, or Crowder, for instance. That would create a big splash and generate a lot of attention, which would bolster these channels. They put you in a tiny room, and they slowly pull people away by recommending only Fox News, the approved conservative narrative. They're going to say,
if this is part of, again, a demonstrable conspiracy, then why is it on all these different social media platforms, whether it be Facebook, which is completely, utterly dominated by right-wing, content producers. Daily Wire alone usually accounts for a couple of the top the top 10, 3 or so at least, are Daily Wire hosts or channels. On YouTube, if you look at political channels, there is, yes, some big left-wing ones, but the monstrously huge ones, the ones that get 40,000 live viewers, 50,000 live viewers, Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, those are right-leaning accounts. So this bias that we keep on hearing about, that whether it be YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, Twitter, holy shit, is that ever a left-wing cesspool now? This bias doesn't seem to play out in reality. Even if you look at the data of Twitter before it was taken over by Elon Musk, it showed that there isn't, in fact, a demonstrable liberal bias. In fact, it was the opposite of that there was a demonstrable right-wing bias in terms of stuff that is recommended. I can understand why a lot of social media algorithms do push for right-wing content. a lot of it is very incendiary in terms of emotions that are going to keep you engaged or want you to keep participating in, social media. Anger is the number one. So if you are recommending people videos either because you think they will agree and rage, support that content, or get mad and be furious, either way, that's going to maybe drive up engagement. So that makes sense to me why, again, this is not just based in vibes. It seems to be something that is demonstrated by these two studies now. That seems to be one of the reasons why this gets recommended.
Jesse Daniels, a professor of sociology at Hunter College, part of the City University of New York, and the author of a 2018 article titled The Algorithmic Rise of the Alt-Right. So the project's main findings were in line with her previous research. She's examined the rise of the internet in the 1990s and how the far right saw an opening to share its beliefs with larger audiences by bypassing traditional media gatekeepers. The same is true for the left. YouTube doesn't seem to have a problem with that. Daniel said she believes the findings suggest that YouTube has made continued engagement and profits.
Oh, that's funny. I want to hear his own take. We already read
even
this.
though he is banned from the of polarization. This isn't the first time YouTube has faced scrutiny for its algorithm. Researchers have repeatedly found that YouTube has recommended extremist and conspiracy theory videos to users. The problem? What does the media think is a conspiracy theory? The Hunter Biden laptop story was not Russian disinformation. That's a lie. It's actually his laptop. They said anyone who believed it was a conspiracy theorist. COVID origins, lab leak. They said you were a conspiracy theorist. The media lies all the time.
Hold on.
I'm losing my fucking mind.
Just so we're completely clear, there has been no hard evidence as of this moment of me recording this to demonstrate that there has in fact been validity to the lab leak theory as of right now. So far, in terms of, again, the investigators who've been allowed into those regions in China to look at what happened, it seems like the wet market theory, if you want to call it that, still seems to be the closest in proximity to actually having scientific basis for its findings and results. Even if it was a lab leak theory, it should also point towards why people are so horny for that story. Why is everyone so excited to be like, holy shit, this could have been designed in a biolab? Did you know that people may be doing things in biolabs? Yes, absolutely. That's not news. We have biolabs in Canada, actually. This is something that, yes, exists. So that's not new. Okay, well, maybe they were looking at novel virus. Also not new. Something that has been done in a number of countries around the world right now, again, for a variety of purposes. And yes, I'm not saying that it is a good thing, potentially, to develop and or create biological warfare that can impact and destroy elements of humanity. I agree with you. That seems very, very sinister, but I again don't think that's what's happening here. If you listen to the medical community, they're kind of aghast at the very idea that this could be some kind of massive biolab that's creating things. But even if that was the case, that this was done, and I would say I'll never buy into the conspiracy theorists who think that it was done intentionally, even if it was done by accident, which is the closest you get, I think, to a potential theory, because it just doesn't make any maths to me to think that China intentionally created the coronavirus to release it and then watch millions of their own citizens die, have to lock down entire cities, really slow their economy down, slow down the global economy, which is also responsible for consuming and buying a lot of their products. Again, it's way too comic book silly to me to buy into. But even if that was the case, that it accidentally was released in a lab, which again is not where the current investigations that this are pointing, why is it that you want someone to blame? It's like the Spanish flu all over again. The Spanish flu did not originate in Spain. And globally, again, by calling it the Spanish flu and directly associating it with Spain and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it originated in America, but that can have very, very serious effects, specifically in the vilification of, other nations, as if this is somehow something that they intentionally did, or even if they unintentionally did it had devastating effects on the entire world. I mean, if you really want to stop things like, say, bird flus or a lot of these novel viruses from coming along, you'd have to take a really strong look at factory farming, at the factory farming industry, and how that can be, again, very fertile ground for the development of a lot of these viruses that can cross over from, animals to people.
As they're doing right now. Let's see who wrote this. This is NBC News' Victoria Fang. NBC News is notorious for writing fake news. They are a captured institution. It's absolutely amazing. They go on to say, this isn't the first time YouTube has faced scrutiny for its algorithm. researchers have repeatedly found that YouTube has recommended extremist and conspiracy theory videos to users, is trained to raise high-quality content on YouTube to force YouTube to push more leftist content. The reality is, a researcher...
So here's the good news, Tim. It doesn't matter what you believe or if this is all just make-believe, but ultimately, YouTube is going to do what is going to be the most beneficial for YouTube. And if it turns out to them that, you know, 2.5 hour videos on theory, where someone's just sitting there and is like, hey, by the way, this is, you know, potato Marxist here to give you the lowdown on Kropotkin. We're going to start a reading. I'm going to analyze it. I've got a board behind me. I'm going to write down a lot of the things so I can explain the theory to you. Are you excited? Here we go. Leftist shit. It doesn't matter how charismatic that person is. Most likely not going to do very well on the YouTubes. Has nothing to do with the fact that it's left wing. You know, it's not as if the YouTube is going to be like, oh, well, the algorithm is now programmed to benefit the left, so we have to promote this. It's going to be what exactly is going to keep people using their platforms for as long as possible. That's the entire purpose behind their algorithms and why they recommend the content they do. And I guess in this case, I would, and this is just the feels over the reels, I would posit that the reason why right-wing content gets promoted more is because, again, it's in there. It gets you angry. It can be usually sometimes hate-based, and a lot of that, whether you love or hate the take, you're going to probably have an opinion, and a strong one. And that strong opinion is going to drive you to want to watch, and maybe you'll even go down a rabbit hole like, who is this asshole? Okay, oh, let's see what else they've done. Oh, fuck this. And before you know it, you're watching, again, that content, even if you hate it. Or you might be doing what I do, which is hate watch it for a living. What have I done? I think that's all there is to this.
Around, I don't know, 8 or so years ago, put together this big map that proved left-wing content was recommended more than right-wing content. Viewers of right-wing content are more likely to be recommended centrist and left-wing content than any other way. This means...
Again, he's basing that just on feels. Just on feels. But when you look at studies and numbers, it doesn't seem to be that. It seems to be the opposite of that.
Howdy everybody. I just wanted to let you know that for the cost of a cup of coffee, you can unlock bonus uncensored episodes of Mind Explosions by going to patreon.com/theserfs. Our videos couldn't exist without your support, and all our content is released early to our Patreon subscribers, as well as a ton of extra content you can't get anywhere else. Please like, subscribe, and thumbs up this channel. And if you're feeling extra perky, share it anywhere you think people would like to see or learn from our videos. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We first want to give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. This program is produced thanks to the generous support of our Patreon supporters: Anna Loves Riley, Irian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbar Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bomey, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Travis McClinton, and Words Greenwood. As well as every other person you see on the screen right now, this show would not be possible without them. And if you want to join these wonderful people who make this entire program possible, simply go to patreon.com/theserfs and you can unlock uncensored and bonus episodes and, you know, help us exist.